Welcome everybody to the Black Prospector Show. I'm your host, the Black Prospector, and as you see, I'm doing some prospecting today, out getting some freedom, some peace, some vitality as I'm out here at the beach with my son. He's holding the camera right now, but I just want to go ahead and do this video real fast because it's going to be an intro. But first, let me show you the books I'm out here reading too. I got The Man Not. Out here is my reading material. I always like to bring a couple books with me. Race, Class, Genre, and the Dilemmas of Black Manhood by Tommy Curry. Deep book on black masculinity, black men. I'm also reading The Renaissance Diet 2.0 by Mike Israetel. I'm big into Renaissance periodization, Renaissance training, so I wanted to check out the diet book as well. But check it out. Here's the reason why I am actually leaving you this recording right now. Number one, to encourage you to get on out here and enjoy your life. That's the big thing. I definitely wanted to say that while I'm out here and let everybody know that, you know, at the end of the day, you work hard all week. You work hard for your family. You work hard to put food on the table. You work hard for somebody else. Make sure you get out here and also enjoy yourself and live life on the weekends. Too many times I listen to men say, you know, I can't get out. I don't have time. I have a honey-do list, even on Sundays or whatever your day that you should be able to relax is. Man, you better get out here and stop trying to live for a good eulogy, because at the end of the day, really, to be honest, the number of people at your funeral is probably going to be more contingent on the weather than how you interacted with people. And that's pretty humbling when we think about it. But let me get to the real reason. I wanted to do this video because the video you're about to see, I did with a guy named Christopher T. Now, if you saw the title of the video, you already know. Christopher T and another man were found, or were said to be the father of a woman's child. And so we're going to talk about that. And I'm taking away the intro that I originally did because I guess you're not allowed to say something about women getting rid of their babies on YouTube. So, okay, to clean that up a bit. Oh man, we almost need to just listen to the crash of the waves. Yeah. So, to clean that up a bit, we're just not going to say that here. I want to take that part out. And forgive me with the sound. He definitely was struggling with his Bluetooth, so the sound kind of goes back and forth. But his story is important, and I definitely want him to come out and tell it to us and to all of you. And so, you know, I kind of get heated during this discussion. As truth be known, I understand what this brother's going through or what he went through, but then he takes it to another level that I can't begin to understand, and I struggled understanding. So I tried to ask the type of questions that I know people are going to ask, maybe even questions that you would ask him as you listen to his story. So check this one out. Christopher T telling the story on how he was said to be the father of a little girl until he got a knock at the door and another man said that I am the father of that little girl. How did it play out? Who is this girl that played him like that? How has he dealt with it afterwards? As it's been over 25 years since that moment. So check out this video. Again, if you like the video, like, subscribe, pass it on. This is definitely one that I want shared. And definitely leave some comments down below if you can relate. If you've been in this type of situation, if you know people who have, if you have a story, leave your comments down below. And I may want to get with you on the future show because I think these stories need to be told and get out here. In the meantime, I'm about to kick my feet up on this rock that I moved over as a nice little footrest because the rock was over there. And I told my son, I'm like, you know, as a man, I got to move that rock. I ain't gonna lie, that rock was heavy. But I had to move it to where I wanted to so I can relax and chill. Get out there, be fit, be free, have some vitality, and I'll holler at y'all on the next side. Peace. Welcome everyone to the Black Prospector Show. I'm your host, the Black Prospector, talking to men about being fit after 40, living a free life, and getting some vitality in their life in those later years. Today, I have a very special show. I know I probably said that plenty of times before, but I do have a special show. I have a special interview. I'm going to consider this as part of Every Black Man Has a Story. However, this story is going to be focused on one segment of a person's life. And that person today is a gentleman by the name of Christopher. Now, I'm going to introduce Christopher in one moment and let him introduce himself. But, you know, I have to start out on why I want to do this show. One of the things that really got me was the number of men that were out here that had children And I always looked at some of the things that were said about a woman's right to choose. But it always bothered me that a man, the only time he had a right to choose whether he wanted to be a father or not was at the time he laid down with the woman. Then after that, all the burden was on him to quote unquote step up to be, and if when you're looking on the podcast, that was definitely in air quotes. All the burden was on for him to step up. That's what everyone said. That's what society always said, that he needs to step up and be a father to the child. But I looked at the numerous ways we never said a woman was not stepping up if she did not want to be a mom. I think this is especially relevant today, as right now the nation, just because midterms are coming and they're trying to all galvanize their base and get everyone out there to vote, and that's a whole other show in and of itself. But now we're talking again about everything for women, and I'm not going to go into that discussion. And I'm happy to say, as a man that's about to be 52, I really don't even have a dog in this fight anymore. So y'all fight it out. But I will say this: we still aren't having the discussion about a man having a right to choose. And that's not even being brought up. And one of the things that I've been seeing lately are memes, and I probably should have found one. I found some memes or saw some memes out there on Instagram and other places where there were women that posted and said, oh, well, if I don't have a right to my body, well, basically something like making a deal or something to the effect of, and every baby that's born also should be DNA tested. And I shared one of them and said, I applaud that decision. I applaud that a ton. Let's make sure that every child that is born in the hospital or out of the hospital, that every child gets DNA tested. Every child. I don't care whether you're married or whether you're not married. And so with that, I think it's a perfect time. It's an interview I've been wanting to do. And I've been wanting men to tell me their stories. And I have heard, I'm going to share just some of the stories I've heard from guys as we go along and discuss today. But I'm glad that this guy came forward and wanted to share his story. And it is his story about, let's just say, Billie Jean. And if you know the song Billie Jean, and most of us, what's funny is most of us don't even know what that song is about. We just say, Billie Jean is not mine. And, we just get that part, and we know the moonwalk, and we know to grab our crotch, but we really don't know the lyrics to that song. And but she said, I am the one, but the kid is not my son. And so today we're going to have an interview, and I would like to now introduce Christopher to you. Christopher, can I call you Chris during this interview if you don't mind?
That works for me.
Cool. Thank you. So, you joined us today. You shared your story with me, and I thought it was definitely fascinating. It pissed me off. I'm not even going to lie. It pissed me off. And to just kind of know that this is not an unusual case. Statistically, well, I'll get into the stats later. I'm going to just do what I do with every Black man has a story. And of course, we're talking uniquely about your story. So we'll have to go into the usual format of starting, hey, tell me, what was elementary school like for you? We don't have to go there. But let's start out with the story that you're here and that you wanted to share. Chris, tell us a story.
Well, how can I line this up? I guess it was in just my dating years, we could say. And there were just, women I was going out with. I wasn't looking to get married or anything like that. I wasn't looking to become a father anytime soon, any of that. I just, I knew a lot of women who, I hung out with, people that I was just kicking it with on the phone, people I would, go out and have something to eat with. Some of those turned into, like, how can we say, just a night. And just, however that relationship was, it just continued the way that it was. So in this particular story, I knew this one young lady that I used to work with, and we got to be really good friends. We laughed, we got along very well, very attractive, brown skinned, tall woman. And, we hung out for a little while, getting to, she had a child at that time, a little girl, I think maybe 4 or 5 years old. I don't even remember. I mean, we're talking about almost 30 years ago. And, we went out a few times. I met her at her house a few times. And it was just like, you know, you have that period where you meet women and you just kind of feeling each other out. You just like, okay, are we falling into the friend zone? Is this go somewhere else? It was never really verbalized. It was just kind of, we was having fun. Um, there was no, we'll say, there was no intimacy of any sort. And I was just, it was kind of one of those things where we were both just friends, but I think in the back of our minds, both of us were just kind of curious if something else was coming out of this, even though there was nothing that would give us signals that said we should move forward with that. So I'll introduce it that way.
Okay. Okay. Um, let me ask you this. At this time, did you have any children? Were you married, single? I mean, I know you said you were dating, but just to be clear, still make sure.
I'm living the single
Life.
So I was very much single. I was doing my club thing at the time. I was just, really coming into, how can I say, if we were to compare this to, say, an athlete's career, I would just say I was my peak form at that point.
Mm.
I didn't have any problems with meeting women. I was just having fun at that point. I didn't have any kids. I hadn't been married. I was just exploring. I'll leave it at that. I was just exploring. I wasn't looking for really anything serious, even though if something came along, I was definitely, I had my eyes open to see if something could come out. But at that point, no, I was happy with my life.
Okay.
Go ahead.
No, I just really wrote down no problem getting women because
Mm-hmm.
I got to feel I'm gonna probably loop back around to that.
Mm-hmm.
So okay, you said it was really no serious intimacy or anything going on. So how long were y'all just kind of kicking it? I mean, that you continue, just pick up from there.
It's looking back, I can't even say how long that was, but I would estimate probably less than a year, maybe. I would, when we were working together, we worked briefly together in a store. And like I said, it got into, we was just hanging out. I think we might have went out a few times. We'd talk on the phone. It was always fun. It was always laughing. I got to know her daughter. But like I said, I was just generally, when I used to go out with women, different women, I always knew from the very beginning, well, at least after the first conversation, where that was going to go, particularly after the first physical meeting. Like, you meet someone, you talk to them on the phone for a minute, you end up going out. Where I was at that point in my life, I just knew where these relationships would go. I could tell from talking to a person for, X amount of, I don't know, weeks or whatever, be like, okay, this is not a person I can see myself with for a long time, but she might be fun to hang out with. Whatever comes out of that comes out of that. But that's this particular relationship, I was just not really clear about it. It just kind of seemed, we hung out for a little while, then we kind of distanced each other, distance from. There was a period where we wasn't hanging out, then it was really strange. I can't even put my finger on it. It's just that we were just good friends at that point. And I was just enjoying that because she was somebody I could kick it with, So that's how I remember it going down.
Well, you said she had a daughter. How old was her daughter?
I want to say about 4 or 5 at the time.
Mm.
Yeah, I would say.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So all right, man. Go ahead. Go ahead. So she has about 4 or 5 year old daughter. Y'all sounds like y'all had a strange relationship, almost like you were in the friend zone, but you weren't in the friend zone. Obviously, I know where the story is going. You obviously didn't stay in the friend zone. Whose idea was that?
Man, how could I look back and try to kind of wonder how that happened because I had this friend that I grew up with, this guy, and I had been knowing him since I was about, I don't know, maybe 13 or 14, and we was just real good friends. And the funny thing about it is, if you talk about someone having a type, it's a lot of men have a certain type, like that's my type right there. I like the short, thick women, or I like the tall, slim women, or I like the dark skin. You got brothers who are obsessed with light skinned women. And in all honesty, this never occurred to me, but I remember visiting this woman with this particular friend one night, and he just instantly just was infatuated with her because this guy, he's lighter skinned, he's a light skinned guy, but he always had a thing for dark skinned women. I mean, he loved like darker than just what you call brown skin. I'm like, he really had a thing for dark skinned women. And when he met her, I mean, I could just see it in his face. Like it hadn't occurred to me that she was really his type. It's not to say that she was not my type, but because I was already in a friendship zone with her, I never really thought much more of it. But then when I saw how he was looking at her, he was like almost like infatuated with her. It was just kind of funny. Like it just occurred to me. I'm like, wow, I've been knowing this woman, for a few months now. And it never occurred to me like, dang, she's actually his type. If I was to, just line up the type of women I had seen him date up until that point. So that was intriguing.
So it almost sounds like you wanted to hook her up with your boy.
It almost turned into that, but she didn't have any interest in him. It was like she dropped enough hints that it was either going to be me or it's not. She didn't really have any interest in him. You can take your boys around people.
Yeah.
I remember a situation where when I was in high school, I had this real good friend who turned out to be a really good dentist. And I can't remember. I just remember I had met this one young lady at the rival school, and I ended up introducing the two of them. Now, mind you, I was interested in her, but she took to him. So it's just like, okay, I just had to step back. I wasn't a hater or nothing. I'm like, okay, she's feeling him. That's my boy. Okay, whatever. In this particular scenario, I got the vibe that even though we were still friends, the door was still more open for me. She was not she wasn't checking for my boy that way.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So, all right. So you didn't hook them up. So then how did you two end up progressing along, you and the young lady?
Man, this kind of thing just happened out of nowhere. She had moved to another city. And I wish I could remember how that happened, but we're talking about almost 30 years ago. And she called me one night and says, what you doing? I'd like to see you. Why don't you come up and see me?
Was this like after 2 a.m?
No, it wasn't that late. I would say it was.
All right.
It might have even been a night where I went to a club because I just, at that age, I was doing a lot of clubbing. And, there were those situations where people would call me, be like 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock, midnight, like, what you doing? What you doing? Where you at?
So you knew this wasn't what back then, this wasn't a Blockbuster and chill.
No,
or it
man.
was a Blockbuster and chill. This wasn't a let's go out to eat kind of thing.
No. Well, the thing is, in reality, I'm not going to say I had the intentions of going up there and something happening because we had been in this friendship zone. So I wasn't even anticipating something like that. But, there were people who would call me from time to time. And, if it turned into something, that something went down. But honestly, I didn't go up there that particular night expecting something was going to go down, even though I was in that total, I don't know, you want to call it player mode where that would go down. But with her, I wasn't really, it just, in reality, it never hit me in my mind that would roll down because I was just like, okay, we can go up there and talk. We're going to just chill. I'll probably end up falling asleep, getting up in the morning and come back home. That's how I thought it was going to go. Right.
So I think that's interesting. So even in your mind, even though you at the height of your game, you still felt, all right, I could go over there that late. I mean, I think at my age now, any babe that's calling me that late, she calling me over for a reason. But at that time, you were still thinking it might just be, we friends. I just go hang out, we kick it, I'm out. Sex isn't necessarily on the table.
Right. That's quite honestly, because I'm saying, I'm not trying to make myself out to be, the mystery player or something like that. But I'm just saying that at that point in my life, I was just kind of picking and choosing what I wanted. And so I had developed friendships with various women at that point. So I can honestly say there wasn't always women who I just knew, okay, I want to lay down with her because I was already in a mode where I could just pick and choose who I wanted to do whatever I wanted to do with. And I never really pursued that with her, because after several months we had stayed in that friendship zone. You know, one of my best friends, who I'm still friends with to this day, it was never a question of if we were going to go somewhere beyond where we were, because we just became fast brother and sister. Whereas with this woman I'm telling you about now, it was friendship there, but I think both of us in the back of our minds thought, what if? And one particular night happened. She says, "What you doing? Why don't you come on up? You know, I want to talk to you." And that's what I did. I just drove up there. I didn't have any intention. Okay, let me make this. This is another key thing to make clear, just to show you what I mean by I had no intentions. I wasn't prepared, if you know what I mean.
All right. So in other words, you didn't have a gym hat ready to go.
I did not.
All right.
It was that I didn't. That was really not where my thoughts were going when she called me that night.
Well, if there's ever a sign that a man didn't think something was going to be popping off, I guess that's definitely one. If you didn't have a Jimmy ready to go,
right,
then that definitely, okay, that's good evidence, I'll say, on your side. All right. So I imagine you went over there. Then what?
Well, you know, just one thing led to another. I'm like, you know, her daughter was sleeping, if I'm not mistaken. And you know, God,
you rolled up over there and she was like, "Take this melatonin. Yeah, get here, take this NyQuil.
No, that
go to bed."
like that. I don't, man. I wish, you know, when people say, you know, man, that night was a blur, I can honestly say that. I can say I remember, you know, I do remember going down. It definitely went down, you know, and but that was it. You know, I think I ended up driving home that night actually. And I didn't really think much of it afterward. It was just, okay, you know, now I know this is, we took it a step outside of that friendship zone, and I didn't really know what was going to happen after that. Right. I think, like I said, I don't even think I stayed over there that night. If I did, I think I might have left early in that morning, and that was that. Yeah, that's what I remember.
All right. Hey, continue, man. Your story. So we obviously, you knocked it out. All right.
Yeah. So
and then,
you know, it went down, and I don't think it was 2 months went by, because at that point we were no longer working together, and I just remember, you know, getting a call one night saying, you know, Christopher, guess what? I'm pregnant, right? And you know, I've received that phone call before in the past, and you know, just it might have happened once or twice, and nothing ever came out of it. You know, it was always an understanding, like the particular woman that I might have been with on when that happened previously. It was almost just understood, like, you know, okay, we did this, but you know, I know you don't want any kids right now, and I know if you don't want any kids, you know, that's, I'm not going to put this burden on you that says we should force a relationship. And then at the same time, why would I bring a baby into the world when I know that neither one of us are having feelings like we're supposed to be together? So I think both of the times where where it ended up, I get a I'm pregnant call. You know, the women just, they did what they did. They took care of it. It was never a thing of I had to tell someone, well, you know, this is not where I want to go. It was just always understood, because it was like, you know, this went down tonight, but we never had anything before this. We just happened to fall into this on this particular night. And there was never any pressure. It was never even a suggestion from my side that says, look, okay, you better go take care of that. Because it was never a situation where I had to say something like that, because people just knew that, you know, we're not a couple, we're not dating. You know, this night happened, and to bring a child into that would be a big mistake. I never had to actually say that in the 2 times that happened previously. So it was never an issue. But this particular night when I got that phone call, it was just kind of like, I remember hearing the words and I just went silent, like, okay. And to tell you the truth, the conversation, I don't remember either. I just remember kind of being in a fog. And just over the next several months, she made it clear, like, you know, I'm having this baby. You know, I know what happened between me and you. We're not a couple, but you know, I'm gonna have this baby whether we're together or we're not. And that was it. You know, and the funny thing is that We didn't talk again. We did not talk. Several months went by. It was always one of those things that was in the back of my mind, like, I wonder what's going on with her. I wonder if she went and took care of that. I wonder if she seriously like, I'm gonna do this, whether, whatever relationship we're in, I'm gonna move forward with this because I want this child. Because there was absolutely no communication for the next several months. And then I just remember one night I was getting ready because I was working midnights at the time. I remember receiving a phone call like, the baby's here. It caught me off because we hadn't talked in 6, 7 months, 8 months, however long that was in that gestation period. And I didn't really know how to react. I was getting ready to go to work, and she made it clear that she wanted me to come up and see this baby. So I called in from work, and I drove the 30, 40 minutes up to her place. And, I saw this baby. And the baby was like maybe a month or two old. It was a girl.
Whoa,
And,
whoa! I do want to interject here. So, so from the time she told you, it still was a month or two before you got up there to see the baby. So you didn't this wasn't I went up there the next day and went up to the hospital to see the kid.
No, hospital. There was nothing about a hospital. Like I said, she literally disappeared for 6 or 7 months. There was no conversation whatsoever. And I just get a phone call one night, probably about 9:30, 9:45. Like I said, this is the time when I'm usually getting ready to go to work. And I get that phone call. I'm kind of stunned. I'm kind of, speechless, don't know what to say, don't know how to react. I called into work, and I remember talking to a manager on the phone. And he was just like, well, congratulations. And I was just like, no, well, I didn't really feel in a congratulatory mood at that point because there was no real emotion tied to when she made that phone call. It was just, what am I supposed to feel when, okay, that night happened, and if she was really pregnant at that point and we talked for a month or two, and then she just totally disappeared, and then out of the blue one night I get a phone call talking about the baby is here. And I'm like, well, how am I supposed to feel right now? I don't have that. When you develop a relationship with a woman, you're going to develop a certain intimacy beyond the sex that should probably already be in place before that even happens. And to make that transition, like I said, we were really good friends. I was used to talking to her and joking with her and smiling with her and having fun. And then that happened, but we never really made that jump from friendship to there's something else going on here. And it was just really awkward for me when I went up. Very pretty little girl that I saw. But I didn't really know how to react. It was just, it caught me totally off guard. And I had to start moving into another mode to think, damn, what's going on here? And in some ways, I felt like that was unfair because the point was both of us knew that we were not at that point. And all of a sudden you throw a baby into the mix, and it's like, I understand when women say, I don't want to kill a life. I get that. I totally get it. Of course, I can't relate to having a baby growing inside my body or anything like that. But at the same time, I just wonder how, a lot of women take it upon themselves, says, look, I don't care if you're here or not. I'm bringing this baby into the world, regardless of whether you're here or not. And so when you call me on a night and say this baby's here, what is being expected of how I'm supposed to feel? Because
sounds like you're breaking up a little bit there.
Disappear.
There we go. All right. Now he's slightly coming back. Nope, breaking up again. Oh, hold on. You're still breaking up. So I'm going to put you on mute for 1 second.
Okay.
All right. I'm just going to mute you in 1 second. Maybe your system is going to buffer a little bit. So just to recap for everybody, And I do want to interrupt for 1 second because I'm tripping at the fact that, and I know it's going to be some women here, and please hold your thought because but I'm just, like I say, I'm gonna just try to let the system buffer and come back. But as you go along with the story, there's a couple of things I would like you to touch on, because I know it's going to be some ladies and maybe even some guys saying, well, if you knew she already told you that she was pregnant, then why didn't you try to reach out to her during the 9 months or so? And then secondly, why do you think she waited? I'm tripping out that she waited until the baby was here. I mean, was this like the birth of Christ, where, by the time you get there to see the baby's already of age? For those of you, when you go back and read the Gospels, it's like by the time they got there to the Christ child, the child was already older. But the main thing is, it's like, wow, she calls you after the baby is already here and then tells you this. That seems a bit strange in and of itself. But let me let's go ahead, pick back up and see if the everything worked out a bit.
All right.
Okay, here you go. You sound good.
Okay. I do remember, after the fact, after being informed that she was pregnant, there was a slight conversation, and I just made it clear, like, we need to talk about this because, where are we? What are we doing? And after the conversation, after I made it clear, I'm like, I don't think that's a good idea. Just to think you're just going to bring a baby into the world, and it's just like you take the attitude like, I don't care whether you want it or not. I want to have another baby. And I'm like, I had absolutely no say in that. It was just like, I'm going to have this baby. And that was it. Little he had. There was no.
Man, buffering again. Oh, we certainly don't have to do another connection. Let me go ahead and try to reset again. And while we work on that technical side, I'll just throw in, and again, this is why I want to do this show. It's kind of a trip that as he goes through this, I found it interesting that she wanted to have a child by a guy that basically, obviously she knew that it sounds like they weren't going to have a relationship where he was going to stay around. So this wasn't even a, we in love, boyfriend, girlfriend kind of thing. And she still wanted to have the baby, which again, I think that's fine. But I just think that since we always put responsibility on the guy before he lays down, I certainly think I would hope that anyone who is going to judge the situation fairly would also be willing to say that she was taking a chance of just being with somebody. And this gets into some deep, I'll say some, how should we put it? Some more behavioral science, especially when you look at genders. And many times when you think about when women look their hottest and they go out to the clubs on Friday and Saturday night, I think there's one reason why oftentimes a lot of those women do get pregnant on one night stands. And it's because they're ovulating. And at the time that they're ovulating, well, where that woman normally would have wanted to stay at home on maybe a Friday or a Saturday night. And she just might be like, she calls a dude up and be like, I got to wash my hair. And she doesn't feel like going. But when she's ovulating, she's no different than, I use a similarity of an animal because for you evolutionists out there, that's the first thing you want to say, we came from animals anyway. So that's somewhere where, when my cat is in heat, and that cat is rubbing up on any man that comes into the house that she smells. And so I think it is very similar that when many of these women are ovulating, that does seem to be when they do go out to the clubs. And if they're ovulating, and we know they know, their bodies know, this is the time that I can get pregnant. Now I need to get pregnant by a man, and it has to be even a certain type of man. And I think that is very interesting on how all of this kind of, as I'm hearing it unravel, some of my thoughts. But all right, let's bring you back in. Let's see if it ended up working out. And hopefully we can keep this sound going together, man, because we're not even to the other stuff yet. All right, go ahead.
All right. Well, can you hear me now?
Sounding good. Yep, sounding good.
Oh man. Okay. That you took me back with that.
All right.
There was something you just said, and I'm like, dang, can't remember. It's already slipped my mind, but it was something you just said that just took me back about 30 years. I wish I could remember it. I have to rewind the tape because that was funny just now. So again, I don't know how much people heard when I was going into this, but it was just a question of how am I supposed to feel at this point where you basically put handcuffs on me and says, look, I'm having this baby. I don't really care what you think. Yeah, I want to have another child. And that was that. I thought that, we're friends. Okay, this happened on that particular night. But what does the future hold? If you want to take this, if you really want to bring this child into the world, what does that say? She already had a child in which, from what I remember, she didn't have a relationship with that father. So I'm like, dang, so you already primed up and you ready to do this again. I just, that comes to a point where, obviously both of us should have taken more responsibility at that point. But I'm just saying, I'm just being really honest. I was just caught off when that went down that particular night. And so then for her to just go in that direction, I didn't really know how to react. It just kind of left me, and I was in a fog. That's all I can explain. And for that period that went by, it how you have one of those things in the back of your mind, something that's always there. Like, you got a student loan and it's just sitting there forever. Even if you're not paying it, it's there. And it's just kind of, it's just like, this is there. You're going to have to face the music eventually. And I had to face the music when I got that call one particular night saying this baby is here. You should come and see her.
Wow.
How am I supposed to feel? I didn't have that emotional bond with this woman. So, I wasn't, it was a pretty little baby, brown skinned girl. And, this went on. We made arrangements, I'll say, because it was almost like like I said, I felt like I was putting a straitjacket in a way. But I says, okay, I was in my mid-20s at that point. I'm like, okay, well,
you buffered again. You buffered again.
Okay.
You said you were in your mid-20s?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I was in my mid-20s. I said, okay, I was still in this baby was here. There was no thing where there was a relationship beyond friendship with this woman, but this baby was here. So I says, okay, fine. I'm willing to put this father hat on and see what happens. Now, the thing that I'm going to remember most at that point is that my mother went to visit, my cousin, niece, her husband, and their 2 kids, and we were on the plane when I told my mother the story. This song, Usher he had this song out called, I think it was called Think of You. And I just remember hearing that song either on the way to the airport or when we landed, I can't remember, but I just remember that Usher song being out around that time. And my mother was like, okay, well, I mean, she didn't flip out. We didn't even really deal with it because we were on a plane getting ready to go visit some relatives. And we were just on our minds, let's go have some fun for this. I think we stayed there for about a week. And, after that week was over, we came back home. I says, okay, I have to deal with this. And, I introduced the baby to my mother. And I just remember, having father duties at that point. I remember being in the house with this child, making formula and, burping this baby and watching her sleep and just building this connection, trying to build a connection really out of nothing. I don't mean as if I didn't feel a connection with this baby. It was just still a fog to me how I was thrown from here's a friend, now here's a baby. Now you make the transition. How do you fill in those blanks? At that point, I know a lot of friends who had, 1, 2, 3 children at that point in life. But, I had always said, if I could avoid it, I would prefer to have children when I'm with a woman who I want to be with. And in that period that I knew her, that feeling never transitioned. It, again, as I said, we went from buddy to we lay down, this baby is here. And all of that stuff that's supposed to build up in the middle or before, that just never happened. So if I'm thrown in fathership mode now, and I'm just still in a fog, like what am I doing here?
Mhm.
You know?
So, all right, let me ask you this. Wow, man, I have a ton of questions. But I'm gonna try to keep them. All right, let me touch on logistics, and I'll get back to the in-depth questions a little bit later. Logistically, being someone and a lot of my other prospectors out there that have children and they're not married to the woman, we all know that there's a period of basically it's not as easy as, oh, I now have the baby at my house. So I guess what I'm asking is what transpired for her to get to the point that at this time you're a dude that she still isn't that tight with. You just a guy that she's talked to. How in the world do we get to the point where she's leaving her baby with you? Because I've been there. I know other men have been there where the mom almost is still acting like, number one, I'm going to use the baby as a pawn in order now to get more fill in the blank, whatever it is. And now you're a father. And so I'm not going to give you the baby just yet. I'm going to hold this baby out. Or two, I just don't trust you. I'm not going to have my baby over there with you. So how in the world did it even get to the point where she almost was like, okay, I have a baby and all right, here you go. Take it over your house.
Well, BP, I can't even fathom what went on in her mind, because like I said, we weren't having these deep conversations. It's funny. So I remember telling this story to my mother, and I remember her reaction. I'm not going to say it was strange, but it was unexpected, because you never know how women are going to deal with that particular situation. Explaining to her.
Oh, you're beginning to buffer.
Oh man, why,
right.
Man?
I know. Okay, let's go. 3, 2, bring it back. Let's see how it sounds. And I don't hear anything right now. I don't hear anything.
Mute.
Okay, there you go. Sounds like you're coming back.
Maybe that changed something. I just moved it over.
There you go. Sound good.
I remember explaining this situation to my mother, and you can never be sure how a woman's going to react. The key thing to remember here, and well, I'm not going to say remember, because obviously this story, but for your listeners don't know, but the scenario I'm breaking down to my mother is actually a scenario that she went through that brought me here. She was in a situation where a guy, obviously she became pregnant, and the guy didn't really want to be a father. So I'm a product of that. It's like a situation where my mother was like, look, this is my baby. You can go on about your life. Or that went on. I never even met that man. So when I brought this story to her, I didn't know how she would react. And she says to me, you don't have to stay in this situation if you don't want to. I don't really know what made her say that, considering that that's a situation she had been in, but it struck me. I'm like, I don't understand how my mother reacted that way. I think she was putting herself in my shoes, even though she was a woman, and a woman who had already been through that. But she took the position that says, she didn't say this verbally, but it was almost like she was saying to me, that's not a good thing that women should do. She made the decision personally for herself to have a baby, but at the same time, she didn't put this pressure on a man to accept the responsibilities of being a father if that's not what he had in mind. That's not where their relationship was. And that's what she said to me. But somewhere along the line, I felt like, well, I was at that age, and I says, well, maybe this is something that I should do. So I went on ahead. I accepted the responsibility. It was never anything that went to the court system. There was never anything about child support. This little girl stayed with her the majority of the time with this woman. And, those few days of the week that she needed her house. And she knew what my work schedule was. I would keep the baby. My mother knew the baby. My mother started her, other shoes. And it just kind of went there. She would bring the child's clothes over. She would bring the formula over, and I would sit there and play with the baby, watching TV or doing whatever I was doing. And it just kind of progressed. And I don't know, this went on for maybe a couple of months. I was just, I was adjusting to it. I'm like, this is a situation. This is new to me. I've never been a father before. And I was just adjusting, I was starting to learn. I was starting to, talk to other guys about having babies, what's your experience with children, and this is where things really get really strange, right?
Okay.
One day, my mother and I were home, and it was, I would say late afternoon. I don't know, maybe 3 or 4 o'clock in the afternoon. The doorbell rings, and people pop up.
Oh man, you can't buffer now. No, you can't buffer now. Hold on.
This is difficult.
All right. Hold on. Let's bring this back. All right, go ahead. Let's try it again.
Man, I don't know how you gonna chop this up.
It's gonna be adventurous.
Hey.
Right now you're sounding good. You're sounding okay. It seems like the more you start talking, after a while, it's like the internet just can't keep up. So I think probably taking some pauses in there might help, but go ahead.
All right. So it was the strangest thing. One day,
doorbell rang.
Yeah, the doorbell rings one day. You know how Black folks are. You look out the window, see, who is this that popped up without calling? And you see a strange car. You see a strange car in your driveway, and you don't know who it is. So I went on ahead. My mother was looking like, well, who was this? I went on ahead and answered the door. And God, what should I call? I'll call this guy Brian. So I open the door, and there's a man standing there. He's about my age, about my height. And there's an older woman standing with him who turns out to be his mother. And they introduce themselves, and they say, do you know such and such? I'm like, yeah. Oh, is your name Chris? Like, yeah. Well, he was like, well, my name is Brian. This is my mother. I was dating this woman also. And so, she had a baby. I'm like, yeah, of course I know. The baby's been over here. I've taken care of this, the baby it's been a couple of months now. And he says, well, I got a lot to talk to you about. And he's like, do you mind if we come in? I'm like, sure. So Brian, myself, his mother, and my mother, we sat at the dining room table and we just chopped it up. And this is what I'm saying about how crazy this story got, because he went into talking about how he had been dating her. He had been with her for a while.
We got, all right. Let's get your system together again. I'm gonna mute you for a second. Let me catch the audience back up here. So I know y'all we chopping around and everything may not necessarily be the best here, but that's okay because we're gonna make it work because I really want this story told. So just to recap, so here it is. He has this baby, tells his mom, and now the baby is coming over. And so I'm certainly going to make an assumption that the mom and just understanding women, understanding, grandmothers, that, this was going to be certainly a child that she would be excited about. And then it sounds like everybody's getting settled into the fact that now Christopher actually, okay, he has a child. And then there's a knock at the door and some guy comes in and is like, hey, well, I was dating her too. That's kind of a trip. I mean, this is like the nightmare scenario that I've read about. I've heard about this happening. I've heard numerous stories of men finding out that there was another man that thinks he could be the father of his own child. I mean, I'm trying to put it as nice as I can. His own child. and somebody else comes knocking at the door saying, you know what, I'm the father, or I think I might be the father. Now, let me back up, and then we're going to bring Christopher back in here again. But understand that as crazy as we look at Jerry Springer and Maury Povich and all these kinds of shows out here, they exist because this happened fairly often. And unfortunately, it's something that we still don't talk about. And that's why I wanted to do this show. When I read stories online, I listen to other shows and guys calling in. There are dudes that are well grown after the kid is paid for, only to find out later on that, well, mama actually got with somebody else, and there's a question about paternity. I don't, again, whatever your position is on, I guess I probably shouldn't say the word on YouTube, but whatever your position is on this political agenda, political hot button issue they like to put out on a woman getting rid of her baby, whatever it is, this is why I at least hope all of you will at least support any kind of legislation that at least says every child being born should be DNA tested. It is the 21st century. I've been there. I have been there. And I can tell you that when I was there, it was even frowned upon for a man to even suggest that a DNA test takes place. And of course, women act like, I'm so appalled. I can't believe you would accuse me of that. This is almost the same exact question or same exact response we get when a man is about to get married and he says, hey, would you do me a favor? Would you sign a prenuptial agreement? I can't believe you would ask me to sign that. What about love? Love don't have anything to do with paying the bills, because marriage is first marriage is a business arrangement. That's why you may get married, in the church, but you get divorced down at the courthouse. The church doesn't divorce you unless we're talking about certain kind of religions, but by and large, the church doesn't divorce you. It's not done down there at the courthouse. Now, then I know we can get into the religious part. Well, what you do before God, blah, blah, blah. But the bottom line is you get divorced down at the courthouse. It's a business arrangement. So when men find out that a child is not theirs, and the last stats I heard is right around $250,000 per child is the estimated cost of taking care of a baby taking care of a human being from 0 to 18 years old, about $250. Now, as a man that has 4 kids that I've had living with me, I always say I have $1 million family. So if I get a knock at the door and somebody says, well, that kid, actually, I think I'm the father, I'm going to be pretty pissed, because that's $250,000 that I've spent. And as a homeschooling father, I've also spent more of my time because I didn't pay somebody else to go do that. So I'm really going to be pissed to find out that somebody else might be the father. So let's bring you back in here. And I want to set the stage. I hope everything works out, because you definitely get into the tripped out part of this story, where now this guy shows up. And so he says to you that, and I don't know if you made it clear. I hope I didn't miss it. Did he say to you, I could be the father? Because it sounded like he said, I was seeing her at the same time, and then they all came into the house and y'all started chopping it up.
No, he said, he confirmed. He says, no, well, she told me that the baby is mine. Because he had been seeing her. I had no idea who this person was. It's funny because I can go forward and backward with this story because I was trying to put everything together. His mother, my mother, and the 4 of us sat in that dining room for about 4 hours just comparing notes. Just, well, where were you on this date? Where was the baby on that date? Well, what did she tell you where she was on that date? And we were just going back and forth, putting these pieces together. And all 4 of us were looking at each other like, wow, this woman is playing a game right now. It was really an unreal situation. Just to sit and watch it unfold. And you got 2 men sitting here, 2 black men, 2 tall black men. And, we both sit with our mothers and we're all looking like, what is going on here? And so after, we all along really well. It wasn't about us. It was like, we were all, okay, what about the baby? We're all developing this, dang, what is this chick trying to pull? We're looking at her in that way, but there's a baby thrown up in the mix. And then you got these 2 black men. Okay, she was black, obviously. I'm gonna tell you that. She was black also. But it was just a really strange. After this whole meeting was done and we had compared almost every note that we could, the funny thing about it is that she's telling me that the baby was mine. Then she was telling him the baby was his, but she named the child after him.
Wow. And I got to ask this, because this is from a week, from Sunday to Saturday. Mm-hmm. So what was the baby? Did she figure out, you know what? I want to go out tonight. Let me see which daddy I should call to see who's going to keep the baby. I mean, how did she divvy up visitation between the two fathers?
You know, it was genius, whatever she was doing. But that was like when he told me that, because his name is Brian and she calls the baby Brianna. And I'm just like, oh, okay. She didn't name the baby after me. So I'm like, what is that saying? Okay, you telling me this. After we sat there for about 4 hours and really just figured all of this out, we decided to set a trap for her, right?
Oh.
We all just got together. It's like, okay, what are you doing on such and such date, next week? And we mapped it out. And well, I know I'm going to call her and have her drop the baby off. You guys sit around the corner and wait for her to show up, and we're going to set a little trap for her. And that's exactly what happened. And that was that's just something I'm never going to forget, because it got really, there were tears, there was screaming. Well, how could you do this? What are you trying to do? Who's the father here? My mother was caught in the middle of all of this. She took the baby, she held the baby.
I'm sorry. Let me just pause you 1 second, because I mean, I'm tripping out on how this. Let's get a visual for this, because I'm imagining. Let's be nice. We won't call it a trap, because in the 21st century we would call this an intervention. So you had an intervention with her. So I mean, tell me. Obviously, I don't know if she pays attention to cars or whatever. I want to know, what was the look on her face when she walked inside that room and saw y'all together? Because I imagine she never imagined you two would have met.
No. That's not how it happened. What I'm saying is we set it up where, okay, I'm going to call her and have her bring the baby over here. It was a couple of days later. Okay. And you and your mother parked the car around the corner. So when she pulls up, she won't see you. So then that's exactly what happened. She pulled up, she rang the doorbell, we let her in, she came in with the baby. And then like 5 or 10 minutes later, Brian and his mother rang the doorbell, and then they came in. And so the look on her face was like, what is this? And
this definitely sounds like some Jerry Springer stuff right here.
It would have been made for Jerry Springer, because the finger pointing started, the shouting started, the crying started. It was it could have been, I don't know if it, not necessarily a sitcom. I don't know, one of those made for TV type movies. I don't know, but it was surreal. And I just remember people were shouting and screaming. And I remember that it was the most pivotal moment. I remember my mother took that baby and she went down the steps toward the basement. And my mother started crying. It's like, can y'all stop this? Look what y'all doing to this baby right here. And that's, it's just that was a time I'm never going to forget that. Whatever happened after that, because everything is going to be a blur after that point. I just remember that at a certain point, okay, let me throw this in here too, because it's something else that I remember. One of her friends, she had introduced me to some time before. I knew this woman well enough where I knew where she lived, and I went over there to talk to her one day, and she was like, well, yeah, I knew about Brian all this time. She had been dating him.
Oh, wow.
So she revealed that to me. And, she told me the little bit that she knew about their relationship or whatever. I'm like, oh, wow, okay. She couldn't say. She had no idea who do you think the father is here? I'm estimating that if this is based on the night we were together, then that baby had been born like a month early to me. And the woman, she couldn't. This woman couldn't help me. She was like, I couldn't tell you. It could be either one of you. This sounds like something y'all gonna have to get a test over, because she has, she's told me that she's been dating this guy. She also told me about you, talking to me, and it was just, damn, what? I don't know. What am I supposed to do with this? The situation. I didn't see that baby again, and from what I understood, some time passed, And she ended up marrying some guy and I think moving out of state. So to this day, I still don't know what happened to that situation. And really, I'm putting this out here for the first time because it's just something that, I've spoken to you about it. I've spoken to a few of my friends about it. Obviously, my mother knows about it. But, it's one of them things that's always, like I said, like a student loan. It's in the back of your mind. Like, there was no closure there. There was no, I don't know. Do I have a child out there who I don't know? Did I get played? Was this somebody else's baby? So what it looks like to me is that she latched on, she got another guy, and both of the guys who were accused in that situation, I don't think either one of us had anything to do with that baby. She went on and she married another guy. And from what I understand,
I was gonna say, so Brian didn't marry her either.
You know what? I can't guarantee that, but it's from what I remember, she didn't. Obviously, I didn't get with her. And I don't think Brian did either. And I believe she married another guy. She moved and she raised her 2 children with herself and this other man. So I have no idea what happened with that. I have no idea if I have a child out there. I have no idea what that child looks like. And it's one of them things like, now I have 2 scenarios like that in my own life where I deal with a person who is my biological father who I've never met. And then I'm dealing with the situation of, is it possible that I got a child out there that I've never known? And it's a thing of, do you want to open up this? Do I really want to open that door and go venture down there to find out something and then just create a situation that maybe I should just leave alone? I've left it alone for all of this time, but it's always that thing in the back of my mind, like, what if? Is it possible? Should I have gotten a DNA swab? And, I've never really fleshed that out too much because it happened so long ago. I've just moved on with my life, but it's always one of them things that's going to be sitting in the back of my mind,
Well, I certainly think, and you said this was in the 90s?
Yeah.
In the 90s, I don't know if you remember with everything with O.J. Simpson. I think that was 94. If I remember correctly. So we certainly know that was when we started hearing about this thing called DNA. I mean, regardless of whether anybody thinks OJ did it or not, one thing is for sure, I do think if it was to take place right now, we'd probably be like, oh yeah, he did it. Once we heard all this stuff about DNA, because we do put a lot of faith in DNA now. At that time, it was still new. So even then, probably to think, well, I'm going to, and as I said earlier for myself as well, I'm going to go ahead and find out if this baby is mine. I think the test used to be like $500. And certainly it wasn't easy to get. It wasn't easy to do. And it certainly wasn't as easy as going to Walgreens and picking up a kit and saying, oh, let's go ahead and send this in. And so it was pretty difficult. If dare I say, that was really the golden age for women, because paternity, could really be, if you didn't know, I mean, all you had was her word. And so I say the golden age because we didn't even have all those websites like ancestry.com, genealogy sites that now they said that you can go look this up online. Don't just take my word for it. They said that one of the problems, again, you can put that in air quotes if you want. One of the problems that they're having with these tests is that, people are finding out where they're from. They're finding out that their daddy ain't their daddy. They thought they're looking at their family tree and was like, oh, we got to make another branch here because now that we had the DNA done, we don't have a match. And so it wouldn't have been easy for you to do it back then as it would be for now. So let me go. Let me ask the obvious, if I may, and then we're going to continue because I want to go back. I know there are a lot of people. I'm going to go to my fellow church folk. I'll go to probably every single one of the ones, not even tens of women that may watch my program. They're going to say, you know what? And I wrote it down. You said that, you really couldn't see yourself as a father unless you had some kind of emotional attachment with the woman. Yet you did not have an emotional attachment with her, but you, here I am, RAW, as Big Daddy Kane said. Why did you do that? Because that was your chance. You didn't want that, so why did you go ahead and smash anyway?
And you really got to ask that question.
I do, because you know that is exactly what somebody is saying. And I can already tell you, the average church going person is saying, well, it's his fault. I mean, he knew this about himself anyway, and he still went on ahead and did it anyway. And you know, every single woman that's listening to this is saying, and that's why if I want to get rid of this baby, I should be able to do it, because he had a chance to make a choice there. So he shouldn't have nothing to say about what I do beyond that.
Oh man, I mean, wow. All I can do is just put myself in the mindset that I was at that point. And my mindset at that point was, I haven't found the woman that I'm ready to be serious with. Now, in the meantime, I'm having some fun. I'm doing my thing. I'm clubbing, every week. I'm meeting different people. Sometimes these things turn into something for the night. Sometimes they don't. Sometimes like, nah, I'm not really feeling this person. But it never, because it never turned into something more than what it was supposed to be. I never really had to think about it that way. I'm in essence laying down with a woman that I'm a friend with. And you know how you've heard these type of relationships where people say, well, we're friends with benefits. It wasn't even benefits, because it happened one time. So I'm saying, in my mind, we haven't made this jump from we're friends who, we like to laugh and have fun together. We might watch a movie together occasionally, but there's just that whole thing that's missing between we're friends, here's a baby. Emotionally, I never made that jump, and I didn't know that I was expected to make that jump, because I'm not the one who made the phone call to go up there. As I said, if I would have thought that was going to go down, I would have went there prepared. But because we were in that friend zone, I never took it upon myself to even think that could go down. And you know what? And come to think of it, I had already done that with her before. I had already spent the night at her place where nothing happened, So I didn't think that night would have been anything different. And then all of a sudden, bam, okay. So I don't know how women are looking at this, because maybe that's something that, people do from time to time. But I'm just saying, how many women invite a man up into their place, late hours between 10 p.m. and 2 a.m. What's on your mind when you ask a man to come over to your house at that time of night? I mean, that's what goes back. That's what I'm thinking about. Like, why did you call me up there that night? What did you have in mind? Now, if that was the truth, then I wouldn't even be able to tell you this story tonight. But that's I have to think back, and I had to think back for years after that. Like, well, why did you call me up there that night? Well, it's almost like, how dastardly can you think? I mean, how bad did you plan on being in this situation? I mean, what I'm saying is, let's imagine, as I remember, this baby was born 8 months after the fact, which means if the baby, I don't know if that's true or not. What if the baby was born at 9 months like it was supposed to be born, and it was actually Brian's baby? And then she said, because when I calculated, if the night that we got together, it would have been 8 months for me. So I'm like, what is she trying to do here? And why if this baby is not mine, that means you did lay down with this guy the previous month, and then you lay down with me the next month, knowing the possibility that this mix-up could happen, or perhaps not thinking about it. My question is, what was going on in her mind at that time? I know as men, that's something we don't have to really deal with, because we're not the ones who's going to get pregnant. But if you're dealing with one guy already, what is your intention in calling another guy between 10, 11, 12 o'clock at night, and then this goes down? Was this something that she planned? Was she going through? Go ahead.
No, I was going to say that I think it's kind of, I'm going to ask you the question you just asked me. You really got to ask that question. I mean, we know that the answer is she needed her back blown out, and she wanted you to be the dude. I mean, to me, this is, now that I'm older, I see it, I guess, from not being in the Matrix. When I was younger, I would have been a little bit more baffled. Now that I'm older, I think we see this with married women all the time, see it with boyfriend, long-term girlfriend, whatever, those relationships all the time, where a woman, and this is one reason why they asked the difference on why men can have female friends and why women, quote unquote, cannot have female friends. Like one of the shows would always show a woman to be like, oh yeah, men, they can have some female friends, but I can have my male friends. And they say, well, here's the deal. I want you to send your male friend a text right now and tell him that you a little bit lonely and you want him to come over and hit and see what he says. And almost every single case, the woman starts being like, no, I'm not. No, I'm just kidding. I'm not going to do that. And I don't think I've watched any of the cases because they do this fairly frequently. I don't think I've watched one yet where the dude was just like, no, you're my friend. I would not do anything like that. And so I think she had you around because you were that friend. You were that friend that, yeah, she could talk to. Yeah, she could trip out. Yeah, she could have some fun with. And she probably even considered you obviously safe enough that she could even have you over at her house. And she knew, and this goes back to the statement that's made all the time. Men are the gatekeepers of a relationship, but women are the gatekeepers for sex. And she decided to give you the golden Willy Wonka ticket for that night in order for you to get some because she was the gatekeeper for it. And so sure enough, bam, it was done so sweet. It had to be a plan because like you said, she knew when she called you over, it was going to go down and she wasn't going to call. He could have pissed her off. Another dude could have pissed her off that night. And she was like, I can call Chris. I know he'll come over. And I mean, it goes on all the time.
I know.
Oh, I know we lost you for a second.
You've done a good job because I'm saying, I don't think you noticed this, but in the previous 10 minutes, you were talking and I had actually slipped off a line completely.
Oh, I heard a dude, because I heard you go, So I thought you were still there because you were still showing up here. So
yeah,
it still had you in at least.
I had to reconnect my internet. I was completely off the internet. And it was fortunate that you had been talking all that time. So when I logged in, it was almost like I wasn't missing, but I was gone for about 2 minutes.
Oh, good. Good. So I mean, that's a trip. That's a trip. Let me ask you this. Because I think this plays into it as well. What was the role of your father in your life? Now you mentioned that here, I mean, man, I got to come back to that. But now, what role did a dad have in your life? And I'm gonna come back to what you said in a moment, but I'll just start there.
Well, understand, when men are having this discussion now, because there's a whole lot of discussion in the manosphere now, like don't take on somebody's child that's not yours. And I can't fully buy everything that's being said there because I think every situation has to be judged individually, because it's one thing to say this woman she's just got a record of having 2, 3, 4 kids with 2 or 3 different guys. That's one thing, but I can't speak 100% on that scenario. Like, don't take on somebody else's kid, because if I was to take that view, if the man who raised me would have took that view, then I would have grew up without a father also. So the intriguing thing about this is the man who was not my biological, but he was a father in every essence of the word, he passed away the year before this happened, and I just remember, I grew up in a house with a father, and, being able to lean on this man and grow up in a household with 2 parents. And I just remember having a conversation sometime it was probably about 92 or 93. And he says to me, what are you going to do when I'm not here? And it was, it made me take a pause for a minute. And I'm like, why did he say that? Because I don't think it was 2 years went by that he passed away. And those conversations that I would have liked to have had with him by that age in my life, I couldn't have at that point. And now I'm being pushed into a situation that, okay, you could say I chose it because I laid down with this woman, but I didn't choose it because it wasn't a situation where I was expecting this was going to lead to a baby and being forced into a situation that I didn't really want to be in. But I look back at that now and I'm like, dang, I wonder how he would have reacted, because at that point I only was able to tell my mother what was going down. I just wonder how he would have reacted if he had still been alive, because he took on the role of taking on a woman with a child that wasn't his. So I'm just, it's something that's always going to be sitting in the back of my mind. Obviously, that situation just kind of disappeared, but I do wonder what he would have said to me at that point, because he chose to, okay, I love this woman. This woman comes with this child. So if I'm gonna take her, I have to take him. He gave me his last name, and I grew up with two parents. Those conversations that I wish I could have had at that point. Another thing, it's a thing that's always going to be sitting. That's another thing that I have to put in the vault, because I'm never going to know. But I do remember having a conversation around that time with my mother's brother, because he had also been through that same situation. And it was like a little family secret. People would say in the family, like, everybody knows this girl is his daughter, but she's never been officially welcomed into the family. And so I remember having a conversation with him, and he was saying to me, well, she was your wife that night, And it just left me so conflicted, because I just felt like, well, why are you telling me this when you never officially brought your quote unquote daughter into the family? It was like, I look back at that now, man, these are stories. How am I supposed to deal with that? All the contradictions that's going on.
So he said she was your wife that night.
Yeah.
So that was, to me, this is the church conversation right here. This is why I asked the question I did about, I know church folk. So it sounds like he's basically saying, yeah, you need to be that dad because she was your wife that night. So since she was special enough to sleep with her, then, you need to, quote, air quotes again for my podcast people, you need to step up. And okay. So do you think he would have said that to her?
Say what to her?
So or let's say if, do you think if she would have wanted to get rid of the baby, do you think the same message would have been given to her? Well, he was your husband that night, so yes, you should keep that baby. Or do you think that they would have been like, well, it's your choice, it's your body?
When I think about the fact, now I'm speaking on this uncle now, when I think about what he went through, I believe that in the scenario that he was in, he probably would have wished that woman would have, terminated the pregnancy. I can't say that for sure, but I'm just saying, I've never met this girl before who's supposed to be his daughter, but all of the people in the family say that's his daughter. It's just kind of unspoken in the family. She hasn't, the red carpet. She's never been to any of their family reunions. I've never met her. So I just thought that was kind of like, how can you say that to me, but you didn't take that same stance when it happened to you? And I'm not pointing the finger at him, because we all go through this drama, not knowing exactly how to act and what to do. So I'm not pointing a finger at him. I'm just saying, I'm getting all of these different, it trips me out how my mother says, you can walk away if you want to. But then her brother tells me, you need to step up because she was your wife for the night. That just had such a conflict in my mind. And I'm, like I said, it's been some years. It's been a few decades now. And obviously that situation has passed on. But the confusion of that moment has never gone away. And it's always going to linger in the back of my mind of, who is this little girl?
So here we are, and I'm glad. Thank you for sharing that about your dad. I guess I'm just really tripping out at the dilemma that you were in at a subconscious level. That subconsciously, as you said, what life was like for your mom. You have your biological father, and you have your father. And here now you are in a position, like you said, you could repeat this exact same process all over again. Let me ask this question. Why were you not ready to be a father at that time? Let's say how would your life have been? Why would you say you were not ready outside of you still out in the club doing your thing? Yeah. But why were you not ready? And now let's say, knowing what you know from your friends, how do you think your life would have been differently had that guy never showed up at your door?
Wow. How would my life have been? What would my life have been? I think I'm gonna be quite honest. I think whether that's happened or not, I think she would have moved on, because the point is we were not together. Regardless of what went down with her and him, like you, me, and she, I don't think anything would have changed. I think she would have moved on because she needed a father for her 2 children. I don't know what happened between her and Brian. Our relationship never made that turn into relationship. So, I'll say this. I don't wish anything ill on her, because I think her situation worked out well. From what I understand, I think she did get married. She found a guy who took on both of those kids. And who knows where they are now? I have no idea. But I firmly believe that I don't think that would have changed, because we both knew we're not going to have a relationship. And I admire when women do that, when they understand like this relationship is not meant to be. Maybe that night was a mistake, but she continues on with her life. She's able to pick up the pieces, and there's another man in the picture that says, well, I'm with this woman. She's got these 2 kids, and they're my kids now. So I don't think anything would have changed had Brian not knocked on my door that day. I don't think so, but none of us can tell the future, but I just don't think anything would have changed.
Well, if you don't mind, can I throw in my 2 cents?
Man, throw in your 50 cent.
I spent a lot more than 50 cents. I think that this is, again, the other frustrating part about this situation I think that most men have. In theory, we don't know what was going on from what it seems with the first dad with her first daughter. And so she has 1 kid. Let's assume that we at least know the possibility was there for her to be collecting a child support check for that daughter. Then we know that either let's say if the guy would never have showed up at the door, you would have been paying child support. Odds are, because one thing about child support, even if she would have just made, if I would have been counseling and advising you at this time, even if she would have said, don't worry, let's just work it out. You just pay me $100 every month or every week or whatever. And I'd be like, nope, you better get down to your courthouse, get that. I know it's hard, but you better get it, because you don't want her waiting until that kid is 12, 13, 14 years old and going back getting retroactive child support saying that you never paid and you don't have your receipt showing that you had paid for this child all this time. So, but either way it goes, she would have been getting financial payments from you. So now those are 2 guys. And then she is able to go out and find another dude. I'm going to assume if she was really packed like that, maybe it sounded like she had a little bit of game about herself, and she knew how to get a man and I'm assuming she was a little on the younger side too. So she still was at that age where she had it popping. So then she could go get a 3rd guy, and guy number 3 pays his share. And guy number 1 is paying his, and she got 3 checks coming in. You talk about multiple sources of income. But for you would have been paying child support on that child for nearly, if not more than 2 decades. And then it would have impacted you in any other relationship you would have had after that. Because you would never, if you were not in a financial place to take care, or at least felt that you could take care, because I'm gonna assume you were living with your mom at that time. Okay, so you wasn't balling out, you wasn't living out in your own crib and you're doing your own thing. So you still living with mom's your own self. So you would have been paying child support. That would have set you back. And then any other relationship you would have wanted to have, I don't know when your clubbing years stopped, but they would have stopped a whole lot sooner, because you would have been on dad duty on the weekends. More than likely, if that would have been when you wanted to see your child. And I'm making that assumption off of you because of the importance of being a father of what it seems to be to you because of what you watch your dad and what you've watched with the biological man. And so it sounds like that would have been something that would have been important for you. So your life would have been set back. And you probably would, it would have taken you at least 2 decades for you to get back on a path of being, I use the term financially, at least a little bit more financially free. Mm-hmm. In the meantime, she has 3 checks coming in because you and I both know the game enough to know that guy number 3 that's taking care of her and her kids, she probably doesn't make more money than he does. And she probably wouldn't be with him unless he made a certain amount of money and could take care of 2 other kids by another guy. I mean, this is the stuff that Kevin Samuels always talked about the whole time, how the game gets down. So, wow. Wow. Mm-hmm. Do you look at yourself as though you dodged a bullet?
Yeah, I can definitely say that because I've heard, just numerous horror stories of what men go through when they get mixed up in the court because of a child, being born. So I definitely look at it that way. When I revisit that time, I remember that I had got out of another relationship. I was living in a house, and it was just like, my intention was, okay, this was a whole different woman from the story I just told, but I was living with this woman for like 2 years. And, you always think, well, this is the one, and that relationship kind of fizzled. And it just became like a revolving door. It was a situation where different women were coming in, people were coming in, and people were sleeping over, people were moving in. Well, I'm moving in, now I'm bringing my friend with me and it's her girlfriend. It was a situation where I had 3 different women up in the house at one time. I had been with 2 of them. And then the 3rd woman was somebody my boy was kicking it with. And then after that situation just kind of fizzled. Actually, I look back now, like actually there were 4 women. There were at least 3 women living in that house at one time. And then there was a point where it was 2, then it was 4. I was like, I look back now, like I got with 3 out of the 4 women that was living in that house at that point. And I'm just like, wow, again, what am I doing here? Now, after that whole thing fizzled out, and after that whole thing, blew over, I ended up moving back to my mom's house because I was trying to plan for what my next move was. That lasted for a few years. And then this whole situation that I just broke down went down. So I was just like, man, what's going on in life right now? I was in this scenario where I had a revolving door with all these women laying their heads in my house. And then I get out of that situation and I almost had a baby that to this day, I don't know anything about what happened to that child, if that child was really mine. So yeah, definitely I could say I dodged a bullet because who knows what my life would be right now.
I'm moving around here. My headphones were going out on me. So I hope that busy signal that it was giving me, the low battery, didn't get on air, but I still caught most of that for sure. Wow. All right, let me ask you this. As you look back at that time period, if you were to get that knock on the door, as a man, what would you tell that child? If you get that knock saying, hey, are you my father? Would you tell the child the truth? Would you cover up for the mom? What would you do? I'm gonna assume you probably ran that scenario through your head once or twice before over the years.
Well, quite honestly, I couldn't give that child the truth because there was never any test done. So how could I say? I can't. I don't have. There was no closure on that situation. There was no certainty in that situation. So that child today might be in the same situation that I feel like I'm in right now by not knowing a man who probably fathered me, but at least biologically. So if that was to happen to me one day, I would say it would be time to go and take this test. That's what I would honestly say, because I honestly can't say. I feel like 2 things tell me that this child might not have been mine. The story that says the child was born premature, and the fact that you named this child after the other guy. Those are 2 things. If that child came up on my doorstep today, that's what I would say. I says, these are the 2 things that lead me to believe that I'm probably not your father. But if it's something that people need to know, it would be that time to take that step and have that DNA analysis, because I have no idea.
Why do you think she chose you and said, well, we can't say she just said that you were the father, because she told him that he was. I'm even tripping. How long did she think this was going to go on? I mean, was this going to go on for like years and years and years of both of y'all thinking? I mean, that speaks of the lunacy in and of itself. But okay, let me ask this question. I'm forget the one I was about to ask. Man, how come you didn't recognize this chick was crazy?
I think she covered it up pretty well.
Drop some game on the young fellas that figure that they know it all. You go ahead, drop some game on them.
No, what I'm saying is that there were certain discussions and arguments that we had up until that point that let me know, like, what's going on with you? But then again, like I said, when I say I saw these instabilities, we'll call them, I didn't really take them seriously because I wasn't planning on going anywhere with her. So I look back now and I have to ask, the best question I could ask right now is, how would this have turned out if Brian hadn't knocked on my door? How long could this charade have gone on without me knowing about it? That's the first question. The second question is, I'm trying to remember how he found, oh, you know what? That's a piece that I left out, because everybody had their little black book back in the day, right? And he found my contact information just going through her stuff. And he happened to come across this name. And I don't know what he knew about me. I don't know if she had ever mentioned my name, but he took enough upon it to say, let me go talk to this guy, you know. And the one thing that I'm really happy about, because I don't know, a lot of times men get into squabs that have to do with a woman.
Yes.
And I'm so appreciative that he found my contact information. He came over, he introduced himself. We had a good talk. There was never any animosity. We never argued. We compared notes. His mother, my mother kicked it. The four of us would just exchange stories like, wow. I'm glad he came over, because like I said, to this day, I don't know what would have happened. How long would that have gone on had he not knocked on my door on that day? Yeah.
Man, that is a great point, because that's one thing, man. A lot of these busters out here, that was one of the things I always taught my sons. Y'all better not be out here fighting over no woman. You sit up there fighting over a woman, you get locked up and go to jail, and she end up banging your boy anyway. Was it worth it? Was it worth it? I mean, that was a very good point, that at least he was the type of dude that had enough sense that, he wasn't showing up. He respected you. didn't know either. So, almost like I'm thinking of Snoop Dogg. Was it Snoop and Jody? Snoop and Tyrese and Baby Boy, where dudes always want to beef, and it's involving the woman. And y'all know every single show, I'm going to talk about my man, Dr. T.S.on Johnson. Dr. Johnson talks about proxy violence. We oftentimes still talk about violence against women, et cetera, et cetera. But when we start looking at the statistics again that are right there next to each other in terms of women hitting men, men hitting women, but he always says the other one you have to bring in is proxy violence. When they get their uncle, when they get their brother, or when they get their boyfriend to beat the other dude up. And if he would have been that kind of dude, I could see him coming trying to beef with you, and now you beefing with him just for your own manhood's sake. Like, look, player, I didn't know either, but I ain't gonna let you punk me. And so, but let me go on this real quick, because I'm struck to see this, and you've explained where your father was at. I don't know if you know where Brian's father was at, but it sounds like you said all four of y'all were talking, but there's not another grown man at the table. That, to me, that's important, because I know I've watched how my mom related to my oldest son's mother. And at the end of the day, it can never be my side, her side, or whatever, only because my mother is still going to side with, again, it's that thing of love flowing downhill. Man loves a woman, woman loves her children. And so, and then we can throw the grandchildren in there. That love doesn't really flow uphill. And so I watched how my mother still always wanted to make sure I got to have a relationship with my grandchild. And so I find it interesting that the other men that were at the table, or you two guys, weren't in that position to really do much of anything, because you're victims. And I'm going to use the term, you both were victims. You were emotionally abused and you were a victim. Let's call it the way we would call it on the other side. But then on this end, there's no man that is like, we'll say, your uncle's age that could give you advice, that could give you direction. What man is there to counsel you to? Because your moms can't give it to you, because your mom, and especially in your mom's case, but I would say this in general anyway, mom is always going to put herself in the position of the other girl. So even if, and I'll say even in my case, I knew my mom still put herself in the position of, I know how I would feel if I was pregnant, fill in the blank. So, it's like a chick could be strung out on drugs, and the mom's son could be like, yep, she don't need to have that baby. I want that baby. And then mom will still be like, well, but we shouldn't take that baby from her because, she could go to rehab and get her life together. We need it, because mom says, I know what it would feel like to have my child taken from me. Don't do that to her. But that might not always be the right advice. And that's where I think dads come in. And so it's not lost on me that there was no uncle there. There was nobody to counsel you two men, because you're two young men that just got emotionally abused. You just got played. And she'll never go to jail for that. She'll never get charges pressed against her for that. I'm assuming that you spent some money in that amount of time, in those months. Am I correct?
Yeah, I spent a little bit of money.
Did you get a reimbursement check for that?
Oh, man.
And what court could you go to get compensated? What court could you go to for mental anguish? Because I got a feeling that if you would have broke your arm, you would have forgot all about that. But here it is, you haven't forgotten about this decades later.
Man, it's a load. You talk about emotional burden. But just for the simple fact that I moved on, she moved on. And as I said, like time heals those type of wounds. And I think I don't have certainty, but I think the situation worked out well for her. And I'm saying in the end, actually, it worked out well for me, because I was able to go on with my life. I'm always going to have that certain thing sitting in the back of my mind, but I guess that's something I can deal with, because we all have something that's going to haunt us, for life. I don't know what yours is. You don't know what mine is. I just exposed one of mine. But I think we've all come to these type of crossroads at life sometimes. This is what life is about, really.
Well, it doesn't sound like she had anything to really haunt her, because she got 3 that we know of. She got 3 checks. So you're right. We all have something that haunts us, but not everybody benefits from their bad decisions. Not everyone suffers the consequences of their bad decisions.
Well, when I look at that scenario, I just always, with this discussion going on in the manosphere, it just, how is it that a man could be put in that situation? If it was flipped around, would a man be able to walk away in one piece and still be able to say, I still won? I just wonder that. I don't know.
No. I mean, and I'm sure I may have outraged some people when I just said it, but just know that right now, it's basketball season, right? I messed up on my sports. It's basketball season. Right now, on a Saturday night, there's some groupie trying to get knocked up by a basketball player.
Ooh-wee.
So if somebody doesn't benefit from their quote unquote bad decisions, why is there's some groupie right now trying to get knocked up by a rock star after a concert?
Oh yeah.
And we know that that's been going on since the 50s. So that's that frustrating part. Hence why I'm so glad that you're on here to share your story, because it's funny, we talk about it, but it's still, again, it seemed like these are just the loose women that go on Jerry Springer or Maury Povich. But I am willing to go out on a limb and say we all know somebody that has been lied to when it comes to paternity.
What was that BBD song? I thought it was me.
It was right about that time too, wasn't it?
That's actually, a little bit, a few years later.
Wow.
Yeah, I thought it was me.
Wow.
All I can say is, to me, I still was able to move on, and years later, I was able to, have children in a scenario that I thought was better fit for me, because that first one is not the one that I wanted. And you asked that question. I can't remember exactly what you asked, but the point is, I was one of the only guys in a clique of guys that I knew, whether we're talking about at work or outside of work, that had no kids. And everybody was looking at me like, man, dude, what's the deal, dude? You shooting blanks? What's going on? And I'm like, dude, I don't want to be like y'all. I had one guy that I used to know at work years ago. He used to always joke, I want to have a kid in all 50 US states. And I'm like, you go ahead with that. I ain't the one, And he was, the last I saw him, I think he had about 6 kids.
Wow.
So I didn't want to be in that situation. That's not something, how do we look upon that with pride, that you got babies all over the place? I mean, if it doesn't rock you financially, what's it doing in your head that you got all of these kids scattered all over the place? And what does that do to the kids? So I never wanted to be in that scenario.
Man, that's a great point, because I think twofold. I'll go to this first, and what you said about him. You're exactly right. I think he's the kind of brother that makes it bad for all of us, especially if he was black.
Yeah,
he's the kind of brother that makes it bad for all of us, because the reason why you will get no sympathy from most women is because of that kind of dude right there.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because they view that every dude is just go ahead and trying to skeet and jet, ejaculate and evacuate, as they say. But that's not every dude. And I think now I forgot where I was going to go with that as well. But yeah, it's like that kind of guy that does that. It does mess it up, and you not wanting to be that dude. It was like, yeah, you dodged a bullet for the time being. You stayed away from that. But I think now what that guy, obviously, it sounds like he wasn't paying enough child support on his kids, which again, it's just funny that a lot of ladies don't make the dads pay child support, but who ends up paying child support? The dude that ends up marrying her later, because he's supporting the other dude's kid and any offspring that he might have with her and her. Somebody's paying child support. This is why the state is so heavily involved in child support, because they're saying somebody's going to pay. But where I was going to go, obviously he's not paying a whole lot, because he would still go ahead and trying to have all these kids. But, secondly, it goes to show that my man didn't have anything else going on with his life. And that's something that age certainly teaches us. And, lastly, I have to say, I think it's guys like that, again, they make it a bad reputation for everyone. And that's really the kind of guy that the government is going after. And we get caught up in that mix. So he's the kind of dude that may not be paying his child support on time and gets, tens of thousands of dollars, blah, 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 blah. But because the law is on the books, there are a lot of men out here right now that cannot travel. They can't get their driver's license. They can't do anything. And a lot of them can't even get out of jail, but yet they can't go get a job because they're in jail, and they can't. So because they're in jail for not paying their child support. And so the law does protect women's interests as well as it should. The child, that's where I was going to go, as well as it should, because it's protecting the child's interest. What is just also intriguing is that there's nothing protecting the man's interest for false accusations, for women lying and deceiving about who the father may be. And that's where I was going to go with the child. If there was a loser in this, because as we said, she might have benefited from it. She might have benefited at least financially from it. And you might have benefited from it because you were able to go on with your life and start your own family the way you wanted to start it. But if there's one person that lost in this, it was that little girl. Because I always wonder, you and I, we came along in the day and age of Boys in the Hood, how Ricky and Doughboy got treated based on who their father was. And I think that goes on in a whole lot of houses right now. And so I guess it makes you kind of wonder, how did that little girl get treated? How did the conversation go? If they ever did, I wonder if did they ever tell that little girl? Did the guy get with her thinking that he's the father? And Brian, Brian never got to be the father. I don't know. But one thing is for sure, those other two kids that she had, sounds like they lost a lot, but especially that little girl.
I can never weigh in on that.
Man, I appreciate you telling your story, man. I really do. Thank you for sharing. I think a lot of guys are going to be able to relate to this one.
Yeah, I wouldn't doubt that. But I'm glad to actually talk about it, because it's one of them moments in my own history that just kind of disappeared, but it's always going to be there, lurking in the past.
Any advice you'd like to give the young homies out there after what you've experienced and gone through?
Wow. I could make this kind of like a joke on the one hand, but one thing I would say is, if you out there, always take the hat with you. Number one. I drove somewhere in the middle of the night, even though I was in that part of my life where I was doing a lot of sticking and moving. I had no intention of laying down with this woman that night, but because I was unprepared, that's where that went. So one thing I do have to say is that I think we do base a lot of our manhood based on how many women, we can lay down with. And that's not necessarily where it is. I spent a lot of time chasing women where I could have been doing other things with my life. And that's one thing that I'm going to take on to, because, I have 2 boys and a girl, and I want them to understand that if you develop yourself, you're never going to have a problem attracting women.
Mm.
That's one thing I would pass on to my kids. Prepare yourself, because all it takes is one slip up and it can change the rest of your life. I'll leave it at that.
Man, if I may add my 2 cents, because I've been there.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't get that knock on the door from anyone.
Mm-hmm.
At least not yet. I haven't gotten that knock on the door.
Mm.
Now to be like, dude, he already paid for it, man. We already got our bond.
Yeah.
It is what it is.
Mm-hmm.
But I always say, and let me speak from the other side. I've spoken about this with you before, of a guy that's out there. And then I was a dude that was in the church. And so it's funny how we both have the same dilemma, because as you rightfully note, yeah, dudes, oftentimes so much of how we view ourselves is based on the number of women that we sleep with. But at the same time, coming from the church side, the church girls want men that slept with a lot of women.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's like, I always said this back in our days when, we from the D talking about rolling, somebody rolling. Oh man, he rolling. Oh man, he rolling. And you see the dorkiest, wackest dude up here rolling, thinking he doing something. And he really wasn't doing it because, as they always said, he got to provide for his brother and sister because his parents been killed. And he got to do what he got to do. No, man, he just wanted some money to get some cars, some top 10, some Adidas, a nanny goat, sheepskin, whatever. He just wanted some money in his pocket to get some women, because even the church girls wanted to get with the dope dudes. And so it's the same thing. Even the church girls want to sleep with a guy that then banged out a whole bunch of women, even though the church is telling the guys that you need to be chaste. So you need to go ahead and have your purity, and the girl needs to have her purity. But the church, and it used to just infuriate me of being in there and listening to pastors go, and guys are going to try to tell you that they love you just to sleep with you, and but they never warn the guys about the girls. And they also never warn the guys that and I don't think anyone yet still has equipped men. How do you deal with the fact of you don't want to run your notch count up either? That could have deleterious effects on you long term. But at the same time, what do we do about girls who have that as a standard? They want a man that knows what he's doing. As a girl told me, I don't want to pledge no virgin. This is a Christian girl in a Christian school. So, you're right. But now in this with this one, Coach Greg Adams says this all the time, and it always resonates with me because I know it as a fact myself in my own life. When you went over there that night, just like all of us young brothers, No one ever said math is your friend. You better know the cost of your DNA. You better know how much your DNA is worth. A woman knows how valuable her titties are. She understands how valuable her booty is. And she understands how valuable that thing between her legs is. She got it. She's taught that when she's younger. And even we tell her, you better not let boys. But who teaches a young man how valuable his DNA is? It takes two. That's what we always been told. Seems to be true. It does take two.
I would think so.
How would things change if we started valuing our DNA? I know I didn't at 19. I know the value of my DNA. And so how would things change, young men that's listening to this, if you started acting like my DNA is the most valuable thing about myself that I have? And guess what? Your DNA is so valuable before you even earn value for anybody else working a job, before you even probably even have a bank account, you have valuable DNA. Even when you get old and you're in a retirement home, your DNA is still valuable. Ask Hugh Hefner. Can't ask him now, but you know, that DNA was still valuable. There's some old man right now that's probably being suckered by some younger woman that's trying to get knocked up because he has a fat pension or he's a millionaire. He still has valuable DNA. And so I would say to men, know the value of your DNA. No one ever taught me that. My father didn't have that conversation with me. My mother didn't have that conversation with me. And I was the oldest. So my brother and sister sure didn't know to have that conversation with me. Nor did my uncles have that conversation with me. Know the value of your DNA. Your DNA is worth more than you're ever going to probably produce on a job. If you really think about it, that's how valuable your DNA is, because you have the power to make another human being. And that woman can make a lot of money. You don't even know. You'll be like all the athletes that Chris and I see all the time. Your offspring could turn out to be, I don't know, a doggone quarterback, an entertainer, a point guard. And yet now, instead of you looking at that kid on TV and you're like, that's my son, right? And he up there, sure, ain't got nothing to do with him. He ain't had nothing to do with me. You know, and you'd be like, I paid child support on you. I fought for visitation to see you. Just because I didn't marry your mom. And did we not see this? And what was the movie, Love and Basketball? Kind of a similar scenario. You know, just because I didn't marry your mom, okay, in that case in the movie he did, but he still had to let his son know, like, look, your mom was one of them chicks. The same ones that's getting with you right now. And so your kid might be a gazillionaire later on down the line. And I'm going to tell you, you ain't going to get no love for it because you didn't marry that mom. Mom raised him and mom got his mind. And once mom has his mind, you are done. You are done. You will never get it back. You may be lucky enough to hear, Dad, you were right before you die. And odds are that might not even happen. That's how valuable your DNA is.
You better tell them.
So anything else you want to add, man?
You know, I'm really just glad that I got this story on record for prosperity. So if there's somebody else who can listen to this story and really, you know, learn something from it, then, you know, then I'm happy I've spent this time talking about this.
Well, man, I appreciate you sharing the story because I know it's not easy, and I know jarred your memory.
Really
made you think about some things after it's been a while.
It really did. That's true.
I do have one last question.
What's that?
The father that you are now, is it a lot different than the father that you would have been decades ago? And do you appreciate it a lot more now?
I'm a different person than I would have been, well, than I was back then. So I would say completely different. You know, my worldview has changed. I've traveled. I've got a better understanding of what this world is all about. So waiting as long as I did to have kids, I think it was definitely worth it because I wouldn't have been the same person, you know, 25, 30 years ago that I am now. So that worked out too.
Does it make you appreciate the opportunity to father your kids now?
Well, no doubt, because like I said, this is as close to the situation that I would have preferred. And I didn't, when I had my kids, when I learned that the woman who would become my wife, when I found out she was pregnant, it was a whole different feeling.
Mm, mm, mm. I know I said we were gonna wrap up, but I got to go back to that for a second. Did it feel good that she could tell you I'm pregnant and it wasn't a guess what? I'm pregnant. And you were like, I can't tell nobody. I can't tell nobody. Did it feel good to be, I guess, normal like we've grown up seeing on TV? Hey, everybody, I'm about to have a baby. I just saw somebody I follow on IG. It was Tariq Nasheed. Just had his arm around his girl. This got to be like their fourth or fifth kid. Oh, wow. And, he got his arms around her, holding her belly and stuff, proud. I got another kid coming. How did that feel this time? Not having to be, I guess I'll say, ashamed.
Man, it was, again, I'm revisiting a moment from some years ago, and it was a completely different feeling. It was a completely different feeling because, okay, I saw the development of a relationship. So when that news came, it wasn't really shocking. It was like, this is what happens when you're with somebody regularly. And there was two moments that stuck out when I came to understand that I was going to be a father. The first one was, okay, this is the last story I'm going to tell you that I'm going to let you go. Because, my wife to be, I remember she must have been about 3 or 4 months pregnant. And up until that point, it was like, okay, we got a baby coming. We went to the doctor's office at night because, she was having some issues. I'm not going to get specific. She was just having some issues like, you need to take me to see a doctor. It was like, maybe like 1 o'clock in the morning. And we get to the hospital and, the nurse took her in and did some examinations. I sat in the room waiting. When they called me in to sit down, like, okay, well, we got some news for you. And she says, well, she just had blah, blah, blah. It's nothing major. This happens with a lot of women. But the good news is that the babies are fine. And that's how I found out I was having twins. It was, wow, okay. And then the second moment I'm going to remember is like, I watched the belly grow. But that fatherhood moment still didn't hit me until, we had put up a baby crib. And she had put these little twirling toys that you put over the crib, and it started playing this baby song. I can't remember the song. Everybody knows the song when they hear it, but that's when it really hit me. It really hit me at that moment. Like, wow, I really got kids coming now. It was a completely different feeling from what I had felt from the previous story that I told you. So I'm in the end, it worked out for me because I got what I wanted.
That's why I ask. I think, and I hope that encourages some guys that may be single dads right now. They might not have become a father at the time they wanted to, per se, but there is hope. There is hope. And the feelings that you may be feeling now about parenting and being a dad, because you got a child in another home, etc. Man, it's nothing like being in the home with your kids and also being in a stable relationship. Ain't nothing like it. Corey Holcomb told that joke that, let's just say when you got the mom and little baby to be walking into the I'm going to get rid of you clinic, and the guy is going in with them. It'll be a whole lot of guys that'll be wanting to walk out holding the hand of their kid and be like, hey, I'm sorry, your mama gone, but it's me and you now. Kind of like that Eminem song that we were just talking about recently.
Let's not go there.
Bonnie and Clyde. But Corey Hogan, while it's like, wow, I can't believe he said that. It just goes to show, man, men love to be fathers. Man, it's built in the same built-in wiring that it's in us to go save a woman that's in distress. It's also to want to take care of a child. And when I mean take care of, I mean to nurture and to protect and to provide for. It's there. I think dudes that don't do it are actually working against their wiring. Wow. And oftentimes they don't do it because they don't know how. They think it's too complicated. And they became a father in a situation where now nobody is there to counsel them. And I've been there counseling men when their girlfriends were in there getting an ultrasound, thinking about getting rid of her baby. And I'm looking at this guy across the table, and he's got, man, the fear in his eyes. And it was so good to just be able to talk to these men and talk them kind of through it about what they're facing and give them hope. And thank you, man. I hope you gave a lot of these guys hope today. I appreciate you coming on here telling your story, man, on the Black Prospector Show. We getting straight up exclusive stuff now. And I appreciate that, man, because I know this wasn't an easy story to share.
I appreciate it, VP. It's out there for prosperity now.
All right, my brother, we're going to call it quits here, and I'm going to go ahead and wrap it up. You stay there. But in the meantime, this is why sometimes I don't like doing a live show. I keep thinking about I need to do one, but this is where it's good. So I just want to thank you all. If you like the show, if you got something out of it, then please like and subscribe. And definitely for this story, be willing to share. And more importantly for this story, I have a video now on my channel that is like blowing up with a bunch of comments. And to be honest, a lot of racist and tripped out comments in there. But this is one I definitely want people to comment on. Men, if you have a story to share, reach out to me. I would love to share your story, perhaps here, if we can get it together. And also in the comment section down below, if you or another guy you know that has a similar story, or maybe you're wondering, hey, I'm the child coming in this situation, and you may have a viewpoint that we didn't touch on. Please put it down below. We definitely love to hear from you. So with that, we're going to call it a night, and I'm going to say peace to y'all prospectors out there. Remember, y'all, get fit, get some freedom, and live with some vitality, because it's a lot of years, but you never know when they're going to be over. So grab them while you can. And I'll holler at y'all next time. Peace.